Welcome to this Easter special of Against the Mountains of Madness. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm John C. Wright.
And on this episode, in celebration of the highest Christian holiday of the year, we thought we'd do the true myth, storytelling and symbolism of Easter that turns up everywhere in science fiction and fantasy. So, John, the Easter story. Christ comes, is crucified, and is raised again for the redemption of all mankind.
It's
Does
not,
that really turn up everywhere?
it turns up a lot of places. I'm not going to say absolutely everywhere, but I will say that all the best stories I can think of have at least some element of the Easter story in the Passion or the resurrection. Because even that story is a miniature version both of the Moses story and of the story of the creation, the fall, and the redemption of mankind. Every
Mhm.
story, speaking as a professional author, every story has basically three acts to it. You have the sad opening where you find out something has gone terribly wrong, you know.
Mhm.
And then you have the climax where the problem is faced, and usually the hero suffers some terrible sacrifice. Then you have the happy ending at the end. So in Christian terms, that's the fall of man, or the first advent and the second advent. Now, the first advent itself contains the Christ passion, which is a man who has done no one any wrong, who, like all good heroes in a story, has a desire that is very deep in his heart. All good stories have a highly motivated main character. You can occasionally write stories where the main character doesn't have much motivation, like Casablanca, starring Humphrey Bogart, for example. The main character is actually trying not to get involved in what's going on, but the passion has to come out later on. Then, but not in this story. In this story, Christ is so filled with love that he's willing to lay down his
Mm.
life for mankind. Then he is misunderstood, betrayed by one of his best friends, and not just betrayed, but falsely accused, given a kangaroo court, humiliated, turned on by his own leaders. And what did he do wrong? He healed the sick and raised the dead. Okay. Then he's beaten to an inch of his life, and then mocked, and then lied about. He's false witnesses step forward to falsely accuse him, and then he dies one of the most
Mhm.
horrible deaths ever. And all his disciples run away, except for maybe John. And he sits there going, I thought he was going to be this great thing. I thought he was going to be the Messiah. I thought he was going to save Israel. And now he's dead. Now he's just food for the vultures. And they bury him, and the disciples go away wondering what in the world went wrong. And then the Roman guards notice the tomb is open. And they go, let's not report this. Let's
Mm.
pretend the body was stolen. Okay. Then they see the guy again. And they don't believe it. You know, and he says, I will go to my father and prepare a place for you, because my father's house has many mansions. It's a great
Mm.
story, but that's not the end of the story, because he then says he's going to come again. See? Now, speaking as a writer, again, almost all stories have some element of that to it. That, I think, is a story that has never been over. I can't think of a story where a worse thing happens to someone, especially someone who deserved it less, because any story told by human beings about human beings, the humans are going to be human and they're going to have flaws, not Christ,
Yeah.
you see. And they're gonna do something wrong. I mean, Hamlet or something. I mean, he wasn't perfect. Okay. He was either insane or he was pretending to be insane. Okay, you understand? Or Romeo and
Mm.
Juliet. Maybe they should have listened to their parents. Maybe Romeo should have not fooled around with Rosalind the first time around, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
even if it were not true, even if this story was completely made up and fabricated, the atheist would have to say, "Wow, you Christians have made the best story ever," because I can't think of anything that would be more heartrending, more that would be worse to happen to any man, with an ending where all hope is completely crushed out of existence, completely lost, and then happy ending. Then what Tolkien might call a eucatastrophe, a good catastrophe, happens at the end. And not only does he come back, but his body is now luminous and invulnerable and able to walk through walls. And but he can still eat. He's not a ghost. That's why he eats fish and honeycomb.
Mm.
Okay, how would you not be
We
terrified of
shouldn't.
this guy? How would you not be
I
terrified?
get that.
So,
We should note of the title, The True Myth. or true myths. We're borrowing from C.S. Lewis there, who describes the Christian story as true mythology because, well, I guess stories try to communicate truths through. See, lies is the wrong word, but through, whilst, you try to communicate truth through stories,
Well, Lewis
and the stories
himself,
aren't necessarily literally true, but
right?
they communicate deep truths. But in this case, this is a myth that is true.
Lewis himself once thought that myths were lies breathed through silver. Now that was back when he was a atheist, slowly turning into a Hegelian, slowly turning into a Christian. And he admitted he was wrong later. He said that's not what they are. I myself like to tell the
Hmm.
story that God created man and the devil created sin, and God gave man the gift of speech so that he could say true things, and the devil taught man to lie so the words could be used as weapons. And then God taught man how to use lies to make poetry, so the falsehoods could serve the truth. They're not literally true. They're falsehoods. They're fictions. Fiction serves the truth. Now, I believe I'm a member of the school of philosophical thought that believes that all art is meant to hold a mirror up to nature. That the beauty we see in
Hmm.
art is meant to reflect the beauty in nature. Now, it's really odd to be
Good
talking
art.
about the beauty of nature when I'm pointing at a guy who's been crucified on a cross, beaten within an inch of his life, and had a crown of thorns put on his head, and is bleeding from all sorts of wounds. Then gets stabbed by Philip of Longinus the centurion. I mean, it's just horrible, horrible. But the beauty is not in the physical repulsiveness of someone of a guy dying the death of a slave. The beauty is in the resurrection. The beauty is in the
Hmm.
hope that when he rises, all of us will rise again with him. Now, how does that relate to fiction? Well, almost all the good fictions have to have some of these elements, and maybe all of them. When I was an atheist, I used to think it was a very great telling argument to point out to Christians that there are myths from all cultures that have similar elements about a corn king who dies and goes into the ground and springs up again. Like Odin is hung on a tree, is hung on the world tree of Yggdrasil. Now, this is
Hmm.
not because he's humiliated as an enemy. He impales himself with a spear on the tree in mimicry of the Norse human sacrifices they used to make to feed their horrible death gods, and he gets magic powers from it. He gets the runes that
Hmm.
allow him to control the
Yeah.
universe. He's basically a shamanistic wizard who is elevated to the status of a god. But there's still elements of sacrifice there. If you watch
Hmm.
Wagner's opera, the the Odin gives way to Siegfried. The older gives way to the younger, uh,
Hmm.
the new regime, as a self-sacrifice in order to make sure the world gets preserved past the fall of the gods. You see, so the thing that makes the story good is still that same element. Heroes are people who sacrifice themselves for the community.
Hmm.
Basically, saints are people who sacrifice themselves for God. I mean, even if a saint is not a martyr, he still gives up his time and effort, his ambitions. He gives up everything but God, and then of course God gives
Hmm.
him everything in return. That's why we admire these people. But we would admire the behavior even if there were no God. We would still say this is glorious and this is inspiring. Even the pagans who liked Achilles liked the fact that he was willing to go to war despite any cost to himself. You know, uh,
Hmm.
maybe Achilles is a bad example because I don't regard that he commits any act of self-sacrifice. In fact, he's kind of a selfish creep at the beginning. He gets cheesed off because Agamemnon steals his prize, a lovely young slave girl named Chryses, if I recall correctly. But but to use a better example of one that more closely resembles something like a sacrifice and a resurrection is Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. In the Lord of the
Hmm.
Rings, the One Ring, which is a symbol of all worldly authority and power, because whoever has the ring can
Hmm.
rule the world. It's also a
Yep.
symbol of falsehood because whoever has the ring cannot be seen. He operates, you know, uh, he operates through NGOs indirectly, and so you don't actually get to see what he's up to. Uh,
Hmm.
because in the old days, your signet ring was your seal. It was the thing you used to stamp documents to show who you
Hmm.
were. And the One Ring has no signet. He mentions that specifically, and it turns you invisible. It hides your identity. See, so it's fundamentally a weapon of falsehood. Well, it's also alluring. It's also an infinite temptation to someone. So Jesus
Mm.
Christ was a prophet and a priest and a king, and Tolkien didn't have any character who was obviously supposed to be a one-for-one version of Christ. I would say that in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the lion Aslan is clearly supposed to be a Christ figure. Not only
Yeah.
does he sacrifice himself for the sake of Edmund, there's not that
Not
many
even
sinners in Narnia.
subtly
There's
so.
only one. There's only one kid who betrayed his family for a plate full of Rahadum for a Turkish delight, which
Yeah.
is a disgusting sticky candy. Just by the way, it's terrible.
I
It's
know, right?
hey, but look, hey, if I was living in England during the war, during the rationing, I might have sold out the High King Peter for a plate of gooey sugar. In any case, Aslan is humiliated like Christ. He's actually tied up and they shave off his mane. They do all the things that they need to do, and it's not 3 days. It's only a single day in Narnia, but it's a very sad and very moving scene. You see, but there's a deeper magic from before the dawn of time that allows him to come back. Now, Tolkien was a little more subtle than Lewis. You can make your judging between one or the other is very
Yep,
difficult for me because I think they're both geniuses. I think they're both great. But I do admit
they were.
some were more. Lewis was a little more clear and a little more obvious than Tolkien was. Okay.
My understanding is it used to annoy Tolkien that Lewis would write the way he did, or like
Lewis did
with
not.
his incredibly unsubtle analogies.
I had never heard that
I-
it was the lack of subtlety he didn't like. I'd heard that he didn't like the world building. That the guy did not bother to make up an entire language and history in order to hang his story on. It was
He wasn't subtle enough, is my understanding, but maybe I'm probably wrong.
either way. Either way, the two gentlemen don't have to agree with each other. They only have to agree on the basic Christian story.
They were friends. So.
Oh yeah, in fact, Lewis was Tolkien was the guy who talked Lewis into becoming Christian. And he talked to him by saying this thing that you quoted at the beginning of this article. He said that the Christ myth was true. It was a true myth, and that's what made. And don't get me wrong, Lewis had been inching closer to Christ the whole time, and then shying
Yeah.
back and getting scared and hiding in a bush. And that same thing happened to me when I converted. You always hide in a bush and you always call on the mountains to fall on you because you don't want God to come find you. But he does. I mean, where are you going to go to flee from your Creator and your Savior? You know, hell can't hide you if Christ has decided to save you. There's nothing you can do. So give up now, atheists. It's futile to resist. In any case, to make a long story short,
Yep.
Tolkien was a little more subtle, and so he decided to have his Christ figure, the priest, the prophet, and the king, be three different characters. The prophet is the old guy with the long white beard named Gandalf, and the priest is the guy who does the sacrifice is Frodo, because throwing away worldly power, throwing away the ring into the volcano where it was created, is an act of sacrifice. Which, spoiler warning, he's not capable himself of doing without divine assistance in the form of a starveling little wastrel thief who bites off his finger. And the king, of course, is Aragorn, who sets the kingdom back in order when he ascends to the throne. The lost king is found again. Well,
Yeah.
that's the house of David, if I may, because Joseph and Mary were of the royal bloodline, two separate bloodlines, but both go back to David. And Herod was busily killing everyone who might have a possible claim to the throne. And of course, the little baby prince was born in a stable. The last place you'd expect a baby to be born who was actually of royal blood. So it's also the Prince and the Pauper kind of story, if you will. But Aragorn is the king, and he ushers in his second coming. The return of the king is the second coming that we're all eager for. You see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, oddly enough, Harry Potter also has a lot of these same elements of sacrifice and death and life again. And his antagonist is a devilish figure who's trying to gain life illegitimately by eating death. You see, by making a deal with death to be eaten last. Basically, there's more to it than that, but basically the what Sauron does with his ring, Tom Riddle. Oops, spoiler warning. Sorry, Lord Voldemort, the name we can't ever say out loud, does the same thing 7 times over by hiding his soul outside of his body, like Koschei the Deathless in Russian mythology. But Potter actually dies to stop this guy, and sees his soul being swept off to the in a train station, mind you, which as we all know, English train stations have lines that lead to hell. Um, I don't know if you've ever been in an English train station. They're actually quite beautiful, many of them.
I have not.
They're actually quite beautiful, many of them. I'm being silly. Though I do understand that there is the an entryway to hell that St. Patrick found in Ireland. At least it goes into a purgatory. It's underneath a rock near a I forget what county it's in. I'm sorry. I think, however, Harry Potter flinched back at the last minute because the author clearly intended it to be a Christ story, but she couldn't quite bring herself to close the deal. If you see what I'm saying, she made Harry the chosen one, and she made his mom the one who committed the sacrifice, who sacrificed herself to save her son. And the love of that sacrifice is what protects him throughout all his years against the malevolence of the
Yep.
of the death that's seeking him, the Lord of the Dead who's seeking him. But she didn't quite. She wasn't quite willing to go the whole way, though she does put a lot of Christmas symbology into it. She even has a scene in the seventh book, in the final book, where they come across a gravestone where it says death is going to be the final triumph, the final foe to be conquered and trampled underfoot. Is going to be death. And that's a line straight from the Apocalypse. It's a line straight from the Bible. But she was seduced and jaded by material things and didn't quite go all the way. But the chosen one theme is still there. The prophesied boy who is going to grow up and end the reign of the evil oppressor is still there. You see?
Yep.
Now
it's the go-to book for everybody.
Well, it's because it's popular both among the right and the left, because both of them see themselves as being oppressed and needing salvation. Though myself,
so
I think it's much more right wing than left wing, because the bureaucracy of the police, as it must be in a children's book, if you're going to have Tom Brown's School Days, if you're going to have your children's spy catcher catch the spies that the government can't catch, the government people have to be Lestrade. They have to be incompetent at their jobs. Otherwise, there's nothing for the main character to do. You know, and that's why your main character often has to be an orphan boy. Like Frodo was an orphan, and so was Harry Potter. So was the Batman, just by the way. Because otherwise, you go, oh my, you just call your dad and you say, hey, I'm at school. There's a Dark Lord trying to get me, and your dad just loads up his blunderbuss and comes by and shoots the guy dead, and has the cops. If it's England, has the cops haul them away. It depends. It depends if the story's set in England or set in America. So.
Well, I mean, all of the students at Hogwarts are armed, so
yes,
that would probably make it a right-wing story.
Yes. Yep.
Everyone is strapped.
I'll point out though that they have healing magic. Even if you break a few bones during your flying practice, it's not gonna do you in, unless the adults are incompetent and turn your bones into rubber, which I think happens at least once.
Yeah.
What about Star Wars? Any Christian themes there? Because there is a chosen one, though he turns into a bad guy.
It would seem that. Well, I mean, it depends because Lucas's original trilogy, and then Lucas's extended 6-movie trilogy.
Sexology, but we'll call it a trilogy.
Sorry, double trilogy? Sexology? Fine.
I don't want to say sexology, because then YouTube will censor us.
So the double trilogy, but not the triple trilogy. That doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist.
The nonology, whatever. Are very well. I mean,
yep.
If you look at all 6 movies, or if you look at because.
Well, let's look at the real trilogy. Luke Skywalker is born.
Yeah.
Luke Skywalker is a farm boy, which is very similar to being the son of a cabinet maker. He's of humble parentage.
Yeah.
His father, who is dead, in the original story, his father is not God, but his father is a Dark Lord. You know, he does have the divine mandate for that. But that's a story of redemption. When I first saw it, I actually didn't like the third movie. I didn't like the fact that the bad guy turned good at the very end, because I thought it wasn't set up properly. But I was wrong. That scene is extremely moving. Because the Emperor is there torturing Luke Skywalker to death with his Force lightning, and even though the actor is just wearing a mask, you could see the hesitation in him. David Prowse usually doesn't get enough credit for being able to act with a full face mask on. There's not that many guys who can do it. Maybe the guy from V from Vendetta could do it, but not that many people can do it. And you just are waiting for him to see if he's gonna if he's going to come to save his kid,
Hmm.
very powerful. That's a story of darkness and redemption. You see,
But
because the emperor
the
is the
original,
devil.
yeah,
The emperor is clearly the
yeah,
devil.
yeah, of course, yeah, of course. But the original trilogy it's the story of Luke Skywalker finding himself and saving his father, and sort of coming into his own as a Jedi. But if you take all 6 movies, that's more the story of Anakin,
Right.
um, coming into his power, falling to the dark side, and then being redeemed by his son. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
all 6 movies, the story of the original 3 fits into the 6, but
Right.
it's sort of the 6 movies reframe it differently to make it sort of Anakin's story, but the second half is sort of Luke's story. But
Right.
in light of the 6, it's still Anakin. I don't know.
No, you're quite
get the
right.
idea.
You're quite right. If I was going to analyze, I'm the one who put forward the theory that all stories are the fall of man, the first coming, the passion, and then the second coming, the happy ending. The fall of man in this case was Anakin is in fact the chosen one. He's actually a Christ figure because he's born with no father.
Yeah.
Heaven creates him out of a virgin's womb. Okay, you can't be more obviously Christian than that. Now, we don't like to think of our Lord and Savior as a space ninja wizard warlock who fights with a lightsaber, but Christ is in all men, so you just have to give the now. George Lucas, in all honesty, had lost his fastball by the time he made the first 3 movies, the prequels. But
That's
the
true.
story idea was still basically sound. A good guy, a guy destined for greatness, is corrupted by the devil. Out of love for a
Loses his
woman, by the
way,
way. It's the girl's fault, which they didn't play up in the movies, but clearly Padme tempted him with an apple or something. He becomes the henchman of the brightest, the best Jedi Knight becomes the worst of the Sith. That's very Christian.
Yep.
In the Christian
yeah.
story, the devil was not the lowest of the angels, but the highest.
Was the greatest of them.
Was the greatest. Was the highest of them. Right. That's why the devil likes to tempt people who have greatness to them. A brave Nazi is more to be feared than a cowardly one, for obvious reasons, because he's going to be brave when he comes to get you. Well, then the love of his son, who was unwilling to give up on him when everyone else, including his frog master and his dead master, both the ghost and the frog. Sorry, I'm being slightly facetious. Both Yoda and Master Obi-Wan tell Luke it is hopeless. Your father cannot be saved. He's more machine than man now. His darkness.
He's beyond redemption.
He's beyond redemption. And Luke says, "I don't believe it." And Luke
not.
Luke throws his weapon away. Throws his lightsaber away. Now, that's why the third movies made by Disney don't exist, because Maltby Sulkwalker is played by the same actor who played Luke Skywalker, but there's no character in all of science fiction film, there's no character in all of any film less likely to give up on a relative who's turned to the dark side than that one. Okay?
Yeah.
It just makes no sense.
No.
He throws the lightsaber away because he doesn't want to be a Jedi anymore, because he thinks Jedi are bad for some reason. It makes no sense. It basically was undermined the story, and it was a terrible story, by the way. No one I know really likes the Disney trilogy. Now, here's my theory. I propose this to you. It's an anti-Easter story. It's not a story about a guy who makes a sacrifice. It's a story about a girl who does everything right from the beginning. She doesn't need any training. They actually burn the Jedi books on stage. Yoda himself calls down lightning from a clear blue sky and burns up the Jedi traditions, because it's always year 1 or something in Marxist universes. I don't know.
Always, yes.
Because she already intuitively knows.
Years are fanatics.
Just by being a woman, she already intuitively knows everything she wants. The guy they set up, in my opinion, for the love interest, which was supposed to be the kick butt stormtrooper who was a defector. The only defector in the whole storyline is that guy. He clearly was supposed to have Jedi powers, and they did nothing with him. They stabbed him in the back.
They turned him into comic relief.
They turned him into comic relief. It's not like we don't have enough comic relief with Jar Jar Binks. I mean, why do we need any more comic relief?
I would say, though,
but see what I'm saying? She doesn't make a sacrifice. In fact, she sacrifices Kylo. Well, that's not really quite fair. Kylo dies. She's kind of sweet on him. He doesn't get her love doesn't redeem him the way the father-son thing redeems Vader, and then she says she's Luke
Hmm.
Skywalker at the end, and she gets his lightsaber. You see,
But yeah, in modern stories though, you're not allowed to, in modern Hollywood canon, you're not allowed to have female characters be weak and in danger,
right?
because that's patriarchal and abusive and misogynistic, and I don't know, it's probably
So
racist and fascist
when Lois
and
Lane
homophobic and who knows.
when Lois Lane is tied to the railroad tracks,
Buzzwords.
she's got to get run over by the train, or she's got to break out herself. Got it. And
Well,
the woman can't be
yeah.
criticized, and she can't be corrected,
No.
and she can't suffer from any
No.
lack or loss, because that would hurt the female self-esteem.
I believe the way it's normally framed is the woman had the female character has to basically be perfect, and the story is not her struggling and being redeemed and
Right.
coming out stronger on the other side, but her realizing how good she was from the beginning.
Right. And one other thing,
that
the next step is the way females get revenge is their enemies admit they're wrong and turn over a new leaf, and then admire you. You see, because females like to try to the feminine genius. I'm not saying all females are this way, but I'm saying the feminine genius is to maintain social consistency, social order. Male genius is to kill the monster and hunt.
Kill your enemies, kill your enemies, drink from his skull and listen to the lamentations of his women.
Correct. That's the male job, is to protect the women and children. But the female job is to raise the children, and to raise the children, you need for them to know better. When the children misbehave, they learn their lesson. When a female has another female rival, what she wants is not for the woman to die. She wants the woman to learn better and to go, "Oh, I'm sorry. You were right all along. I underestimated your worth." That's why Cinderella is so appealing. Cinderella is a noble woman who's treated like a slave, treated like a servant. Okay? Which is she's treated as being 2 classes lower than she really is. And she gets her revenge because her godmother, fairy godmother, bestows upon her the gifts so that she can go visit the prince, and she's more attractive than her 2 sisters. She's better at being a woman than her 2 sisters. You see? Well, that's her revenge.
I had never thought of it like that. So you can tell female-centric stories.
Did you see the Disney version of Beauty and the Beast? This was before Disney lost their minds. It's one of the best cartoons I've ever seen, even including Miyazaki cartoons. Because
I've never actually seen it, I don't think.
Well, if you're familiar with those,
maybe I should.
If you're familiar with the legend,
I'm familiar with the story, though. Yeah,
you can at least watch the Jean Cocteau black and white version if you don't see the Disney version. But the Disney version has some snappy songs in it, and it's actually one of my favorite movies. One of my top 10 favorite movies. Because it's the story of my life. I was a beast. Look at how hairy I am, and the woman came and gave me a kiss, and her true love resurrected me and turned me into a prince. You see, that's what the story's about. She doesn't overcome. In Beauty and the Beast, Beauty does not kill Gaston. She does not stab Gaston in the back and then shove him off the balcony. No, his own ambition, his own pride, his own feelings of being hurt, his own monstrous nature. Gaston is a handsome man who has an ugly heart, and the Beast is an ugly man who actually, though he doesn't know himself, has a good heart. And the woman's job in life is to turn men from brutes, from bears with furniture, into civilized men. That's why we have civilizations, so that we can. We have civilization so that women can have a place that's safe while they're pregnant. Basically, that's why we build walls around houses and stuff.
And throw pillows, apparently.
And throw pillows. Yeah, they're more delicate than we are. They're supposed to introduce delicacy into our lives and art and all that good stuff. Now, so if you were going to do the hero's journey, according to Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey is the hero is unbeknownst to himself, or maybe not, the son of a king or a god. He's raised in poor or humble circumstances. He's called upon to go on an adventure. Sometimes he's reluctant, sometimes not. He descends into a bad place. He goes into the wilderness and is lost. He gets help either from a talking animal or from a kindly wizard. He finds the entrance to the underworld, or maybe he's swallowed by a whale. Something bad happens to him. While he is suffering, he overcomes either an evil version of his father or an evil version of his mother, a dark father, a dark Vader or something. And when he returns to the light again, he's now armed and equipped both with what he learned or with a magic sword or a mystical treasure. He returns to his hometown, and like the Scouring of the Shire, which did not appear in the movie version of Lord of the Rings, he has to set right what is wrong. That was what caused him to be exiled in the first place. And then he becomes the king. Okay? The cycle is complete. But the female hero's journey, the heroine's journey, should not be that way. The heroine's journey is the princess, and all little girls are princesses, is humiliated, forced to work as a servant. She's the only one with the insight to see what's really going on. She sees that the ugly beast is worth saving. She sees that the prince that she's waiting for is going to come. She endures. She's honest. Okay, when everyone else around her is lying, she suffers. Sometimes she suffers death. Snow White is actually poisoned with a deadly apple and put into a coma. And the cackling witch, who is should not be played by Gal Gadot, if you want her to be less attractive than Snow White.
That's absurd, isn't it?
Absurd. It was those guys. The original Snow White story has Christian elements to it, and the Disney's mockery of it eliminated those stories. But let me continue really quickly.
Yep. No,
The woman goes into the underworld in this case not because she goes down there to like Hercules fighting Kerberos or like Christ harrowing hell, or even like Aeneas going down there to get advice. She dies and is resurrected by the love of her prince. And then Snow White goes off with the handsome prince into what's clearly a cloud in the sky, clearly a divine. Okay, at the end of that story, that looked really obvious to me. And she's not the one who kills the witch. The witch is destroyed by her own evil. The witch in the original Disney version destroys her own beauty and turns herself into an ugly old crone just to get the girl that she's jealous of. And then when she's busy being chased by the dwarves and trying to leave her a rock on top of them to kill them, a lightning bolt out of the sky smashes her at the feet into the cliff, and she dies. She falls down into the pit of death, and the vultures circle down, grinning toward her corpse. It is one of the best movie deaths of all time. Okay, it is wonderful. It is wonderful. Once again, Sleeping Beauty suffers death and is saved by the Prince Philip in this case. And the evil witch does not fight her. The evil witch is just trying to stop her from. The evil witch is jealous that she wasn't invited to a christening, so she poisons her with the spittle of a spinning wheel. Well, it's the prince who fights the dragon to save her. You see, that's his job. But her job is to restore things. That's why everyone wakes up when she wakes up. You see. So the female journey is basically to have your enemies see better what you've done wrong. And maybe in the original version of in the Grimm's fairy tale version of Cinderella, they get their eyes picked out by birds sent by the fairy godmother or something. It's a little more grim than what I'm talking about. You know.
Yeah. It's interesting that I always think of Captain Marvel, which made $1 billion, but mostly because it was sandwiched between the two final.
Which Captain Marvel? The Shazam Captain Marvel or the female?
No, the female nonsense Captain Marvel movie they made. Yeah. Between what was it, Infinity War? No,
it was right before Endgame. It was right between the two best Marvel movies of all time.
Yes,
and
yes.
But are you gonna agree with me that that's about a woman discovering her own power?
Well, yeah. At the start, she's like beaten down and called names, and she's got the little inhibitor chip on her neck, and then at the end of the film, yeah, she discovers how powerful she is and breaks the chip off and then defeats everybody and is basically invulnerable and amazing. And she's discovered how amazing she is. And that's sort of... That's the the Mexican non-union equivalent of the one you portrayed.
No, it's straight up. It's straight up the same. It's the female's journey. Because the
It
journey,
sort of is, but
the
it's
female's
a
journey
really
is, I mean, you have to
terrible
remember,
version of it.
men are naturally aggressive. Women are naturally submissive. And I hate to say it, ladies, it's true.
Hmm,
It can be misused. Our natures can be abused and misused. But men usually pursue women by pursuit, and women usually pursue men by alluring. You see?
hmm.
Well, the the main the main problem if you're trying to allure a mate is self-doubt. So self-doubt is almost always the enemy in a female-centric story, you see? Now, some stories that rise above that, in my personal opinion, like Gone with the Wind, I don't think I don't think Scarlett O'Hara suffers from even an iota of self-doubt. But
No.
I don't know if Scarlett O'Hara is the heroine of that story. I think Melanie is the hero of that story. Scarlett O'Hara is, if anything, is kind of a villainess. She doesn't have a happy ending. Her husband leaves her at the end. Frank Lemaitre don't give a darn. You know, he walks out on her after the child dies. You see,
Well,
but she's an
but
admirable character
yeah.
nonetheless because she doesn't give up during the Reconstruction. She doesn't let hunger get the better of her. She's a ruthless businesswoman. Toward the end and stuff. It's a very moving story. It's a very dramatic story.
No, but what I was thinking was like the story of Cinderella or Snow White, sort of finding and overcoming themselves and vanquishing, well, being
Well,
recognized. I mean, like,
I'm
but
sorry, those two don't fit in with my theory because both Cinderella and Snow White is stories of evil fairies or evil stepmothers are out to
well,
get
no,
you.
no, but what you were saying about it's sort of the feminine hero's journey, the heroine's journey. I just call it that. Um, Captain Marvel is sort of a really badly done knockoff of that
Yeah, because
by the sounds of
I don't
things.
think that Snow
That's how it
White I
strikes
don't think
me.
that Snow White or Beauty or Belle in Beauty and the Beast. I don't think they suffer from any self-doubt. In fact, the thing that makes Belle such an appealing character in the Disney version is that she wants more than what life is offering her. She wants more than just to live in a simple country village. Is the opening song? In fact, it's a beautiful opening song. Now,
Hmm.
speaking as a writer to anyone out there who wants to be a writer, if you can have your main character sing about what he wants in life right at the beginning, so that the readers and the viewers all know that they have a very strong, passionate desire, that's really good. That starts you off on the right track. Because Snow White does the same thing in Disney's 1937. Okay, almost 100 years ago.
Hmm.
The opening song is "Someday My Prince Will Come." That's a song about faith. It's a song about hope, and it's a song about
Hmm.
love. You get all three Christian virtues wrapped up in one. The reason why the modern Snow White story was a train wreck is because it was not about faith, hope, and love. It was about the oppressed class rising up against the oppressor, and
Some nonsense like that.
the woman learning that she is better than any man. They didn't even have a
Yeah.
prince; they had a thief.
Yeah.
You know. Well, I'm
Who
sorry.
knows?
That's
Who knows? Who knows what the original draft of the story was? There'd be no way to tell now. It would have been cut and cut and cut and reshot over and over and over.
they can't tell the story because they don't know how to put Easter into the Marxist story. Now
You
you
can't.
would think it'd be easy to do. All you have to do is say, well, the world is run by the devil. God is the Marxist revolution that's going to come from beyond the edge of the world. I mean, you should be able to turn your story into a story of the people rise up to overthrow their oppressors. Stalin did it in the black and white version of Alexander Nevsky. That's a perfectly fine Russian film made in the 50s. It's got a score by Prokofiev. It's wonderfully photographed. It's as commie as all get out. Okay, but it's the commies are fighting the Germans, so as an American, that's okay with me. That's like me watching it. If I watch a Hindu film where the British are the bad guys, I go, "That's okay. I'm an American. We don't like the British that much anyway." But you should, if you can fit your story into the basic fall, sacrifice, redemption, then you've got a real story. If you're such a bad storyteller
Yeah,
that all the story is a narcissistic story about how great you are and all you need is for the world to recognize your greatness, and then suddenly you'll be
that's the only.
Captain Marvel,
But that's
that's
but
that's
that's the story they
that's
tell.
an ego
That's the
trip.
only story that. That's the only story they seem to know how to tell.
Right, because they're it's a story of paranoia, just by the way. It's a
Well,
story where
but
the
I
whole
mean,
world is out to get you. You see?
but I think part of it is, at least for things like Captain Marvel, you can't. Do you remember? Um, it was X-Men Apocalypse, I think. It was one of the rebooted X-Men movie where they're all young, where they were the young X-Men rather than the older X-Men. So they had in the early 2000s they made some X-Men
Hmm.
films, and then they made X-Men First Class, which was the X-Men but many years earlier,
Hmm.
back when they were just sort of getting started,
Yeah.
rather than sort of the established team and the new members joining it.
Back in the
And
'60s, before Charles Xavier was in a wheelchair, I saw some of those.
yeah. But they made X-Men Apocalypse, and there was a scene in it where Mystique, Apocalypse, has grabbed her by the throat, and they used it in the it was in the trailer, and I think it was in some of the movie advertising, and the feminists lost their minds. Like, he's doing violence to a woman, you can't show that, blah blah blah. And so in modern Hollywood films, you can't put the female characters in danger, because if you do, you're doing violence to them. But you can't tell a story where the hero of the story has to be laid low and then get back up and overcome the odds. Like,
Also,
that's just that's the arc of the story. That if the hero is impervious and can never be in any danger, it's not a very compelling story.
it's not
I
compelling at
mean,
all. Now, here's what's worse. Here's what's
yeah,
worse. The story of Christ is the story of Christ out of pure love saving mankind. He left his throne in heaven where everything was fine,
hmm,
for him, and not only died, but died a humiliating death after torture, after being stabbed in the
we don't
back by his
appreciate it.
by one of his
We
best
do
friends.
not. We
Okay,
we we often do not appreciate just how, like, Christ died, but it was so much more than that.
it was so much worse than anything else I can think of. Because what did
I
he
mean,
die for? Curing the sick, raising the dead, helping people, getting falsely
well,
accused.
angering the authorities of the day.
By being nice, by being honest, by telling them by reminding what their job was. Yes, I quite
Well, that'll
understand.
teach him.
I quite
Well, that'll
understand.
teach him. That'll teach him, won't
But
it?
there is also that's a religious story, but it's also every erotic story ever written is actually the story of Superman and Lois Lane. It's the story of woman in danger, man saves woman, and only the brave deserve the fair. Woman throws herself in the man's arms. Now, I don't know if that's ever
Hmm.
actually happened in real life, even once. Maybe there's some woman out there who married the policeman who rescued her from a burglar, or something. But it's not. But it's a very common story. It's the perils of
Hmm.
Pauline. She gets tied to a railroad tracks and she gets rescued by the Sam Swell or whatever his name is. I can't even remember the name of it.
I think actual relationships that start like that don't end well because,
No, no, no. You're looking at it the wrong way.
well,
It's if she is grateful because he is able to protect her. Every woman is threatened by the dragon of loneliness, terrible,
hmm,
terrible loneliness, and this guy is actually the white knight who saves her. Any guy, even an ugly guy. Okay,
yeah,
you see, that's what the story is really about.
okay.
So I don't know how many policemen have actually married the women that they save from burglars. I don't think it's ever happened, and maybe it
Oh,
doesn't.
I was just going to say, relationships that start in trauma like that don't usually go the distance.
Yeah, but if you're a girl and you want to find out if the guy's really interested in you, and he has to overcome 12 terrible tasks and answer the riddle of
Sure.
the evil genie, and also kill your ogre father who's keeping you chained up in the basement, you know,
Sure.
or even just climb your hair in case you have really long hair. He's got to do something. The guy's got to do something.
No,
Okay.
he does. Yes. Oh no, I agree with that. I was just sorry. It was slightly tongue in cheek.
Sure, 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 sure.
Relationships that start in trauma don't
But that's still
apparently
a
don't normally
story.
last.
But that's still a story of salvation.
Hmm.
Girl's in danger, man comes to save her. Now, if you say, well, as of now, the feminist agenda says we can never put a girl in danger, that means okay, that means you can't have a Superman. One of the worst adaptations I've ever seen in my
Hmm.
entire life was one of my favorite books, which is A Princess of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. For those of you who
Mhm.
have never read the book, A Princess of Mars starts with the death of John Carter as he's trapped in a cave surrounded by savage redskins who are coming in to kill him, but they're too afraid to follow him into the cave, which is filled with some sort of dead bodies. And he's overcome by some sort of gas or spirit or something, and he wakes up
And
on
then he ends up
Mars.
on Mars.
He wakes up on Mars
Yeah.
among green Martians. But because he's an Earthman, he's stronger and can jump higher and faster than the Martians can. So he's actually a superhuman on Mars. And the savage green Martians, because Mars is a dying planet, the resources are getting less and less every year. The amount of crops gets less and less. Everyone is in desperate competition with each other. So even though they have radium guns, even though they have atomic pistols, they prefer to sword fight because they just can't afford to go all out. And he falls in love with Dejah Thoris, the incomparable Dejah Thoris, who's the most beautiful woman of two worlds, when the Red Martians shoot down one of her flying airships. This was back in the day before aircraft travel was thought to be possible. A flying machine was still science fiction in those days. Well, because he is kinder than anyone else on Mars, because he comes from a younger planet where we remember love and companionship, he befriends his guard dog and basically rescues the girl. When the Green Martians try to beat her, he jumps up and stabs one of them full in the throat and kills him, and takes his place in the tribe. Becomes his position and gets his stuff. And then because he's such a good fighter, he managed to win the affection and the respect of the savages, and so on. In the remake, not the remake, in the film version done by Disney, this was when Disney was starting to go mad, and you could see the crazy eyes. You could see the stammering speech. They decided to call the story not A Princess of Mars, but John Carter.
John Carter of Mars.
No, not even John Carter of Mars, just John Carter.
This is John Carter?
Imagine if you were going to call Raiders of the Lost Ark Clark Jones Jr. Henry Jones Jr. Excuse me, Henry Jones Jr. as the name of your story. Okay, not even Indiana Jones. It's Henry Jones Jr. Okay, so in this version of the story, he's not fighting Indians at the beginning. He's trying not to fight Indians who are innocent bystanders being picked on by white men. And John Carter is not the greatest swordsman of two planets. He is still strong when he gets to Mars. But when he steps in front of the woman and says, "I'll protect you," she shoves him aside and then beats up the guy herself that was menacing her.
Ugh.
And then I said, "Okay, well,
I've never seen it. I never watched it.
Never see it. Never see it. Never see it. It's worse than you can imagine. They didn't even make her red. The red Martians are supposed to be red as a woodpecker skull. So, in any case, what's the point of having a white knight or a handsome prince if the princess can save herself?
If she can girl boss herself out of it?
If she can slay the dragon, there's no need for any men to be in there. Okay. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to tell a story about an Amazon, or the Bionic Woman, or some of the woman who has the chops to defend herself, go ahead. But then you're not going to be telling a story about her falling in love and getting swept off her feet. Unless it's Wonder Woman falling in love with the Batman, because Batman is so awesome he could he could be worth it for her. But not Steve Trevor. I'm sorry, Steve Trevor's a nobody. No one likes him. No one remembers him. They all remember Lois Lane because Lois Lane is hot. Lois Lane is the small town boy goes to the big city, and the big city girl is classy and is above him in rank. Likewise, the Earthman John Carter goes to Mars and he falls in love with the princess. The princess is above him in rank. The only way he can win her heart is to beat his way, kill all her enemies. And John Carter basically draws his sword and fights for his princess from the North Pole to the South Pole of Mars over the next 3 books, slaughtering everyone in his way, okay? He has to earn it, okay? That's what a man's story is about. A man's story is earning the right to be worthy of your woman, okay? That's why Beauty and the Beast is not about the Beast. The Beast does not do anything to earn the love of the girl, basically. It's just kind of a given. But she has to earn his love by transforming him, you see? By saving him the same way Luke saves his father. And Luke saves his father by not giving up on him, by having faith. Do you see how Christian that is?
Yeah. Oh no, I get that. I just had a possibly a bad thought. That story of the higher ranking woman coming and being overcome and charmed and falling in love with the lower ranking man and then living happily ever after. That's the plot of every Hallmark movie.
Of course. Of course. But usually the Hallmark movies are no, I think you're wrong. Here's why I'm going to say that. The Hallmark movies that my wife has forced me to see all concern a businesswoman who is unhappy
Well,
in the
yeah.
man's world, and she goes to a place in Connecticut, usually a farm or a bed and
Yep.
breakfast, and the high class guy, either a pirate or a doctor or a Viking or a Red Indian chief or Rhett Butler, has to be won over by her because uh, she is so domestically useful. She's so honest and true and beautiful. You see,
Oh,
she usually
I
marries up.
found.
If in the cases I'm talking about where she marries down, usually he has to earn a higher rank. He has to overcome the obstacles to be worthy of
Oh,
her
that's true.
hand.
Usually in the Hallmark film, he secretly turns out to be a town millionaire or something.
Yes, yeah, because he's higher rank. The women's stories are about women of low rank, Cinderella, winning a guy of higher rank. But in Cinderella, she actually in that story she was a princess all along, or at least the daughter of a wealthy merchant. She was really being treated less than her rank deserved. The same way, and I hate to say it, Captain Marvel was treated less than her actual inner worth deserved. That's why it's a Mexican, a cheap knockoff version. They're still trying to
Hmm.
tell the Easter story there, because Christ was actually much higher than he looked like. You
Yeah.
only get to see what he looks like during the transformation, the transfiguration on the mountain.
Transfiguration. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise he hides. He even tells people not to tell his. He says, "Don't talk about this when he cures the leper." He does it once or twice other times too. He says, "Don't tell anyone who I am." You say, very humble. I think we Christians have the only humble God of all time. Zeus was never humble. Even when
No.
Zeus and Odin both traveled in disguise among men, Zeus did it in order to trick men into being bad hosts so he could kill them if they broke the
Hmm.
guest law, you know. And Zeus did it to do things like to sneak around and find out what Siegfried was up to and things like that. But humility is a Christian virtue because we believe that the least shall be first. And what
Hmm.
happens on John Carter? John Carter of Mars is the least. He's a slave at the beginning. He's captured by the savages. And who is Cinderella at the beginning? She's the least. She's a servant girl, or treated like one, you know. So I'm trying to think of some story that doesn't fit into the Easter mold, and I thought of one that a Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, because
Hmm.
there Frankenstein, he's literally, by the way, he's literally an alchemist. He studies Paracelsus at his academy. Okay, and he brings men to life using the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone back in the old days was referred to as the Stone of the Franks, which in German is Frankenstein. Frankenstein. His name literally is a reference to the Holy Grail, which allows you to bring life to non-life, cure the sick, and to make homunculi, to make artificial
Hmm.
creatures. Well, Mary Shelley is very interesting as a female author because her writing style is really overwrought. You have to really like Victorian overwrought writing to like her story. And Frankenstein himself is so emotionally shattered, and he always has the back of his wrist to his forehead. He's always bemoaning. He's not like the guy in the movies. The guy in the movies is actually kind of sinister and cool, but he's played by Peter Cushing at least in the Hammer versions of the story. But it's a story about the creator imperfectly creating. It's man literally mocking God, and he gives birth without a woman. There's no mother for Frankenstein, see?
Hmm.
And of course, so he turns into a monster. Frankenstein doesn't raise the monster; he screams and runs away. The monster escapes and is raised in the wilderness basically by himself. Every time he approaches man, they throw rocks at him and so on. And he only learns how to speak because he manages to hide in a hovel behind the wall where he can overhear a peasant family who is they love each other, and one of them is trying to learn English or learn German, I guess.
Hmm.
You know, so
Hmm.
he actually gets it's uh it's sort of like Tarzan learning how to read from reading a French children's books in the plane wreck of his where his parents were killed.
Yeah.
So now, I'm a big believer in the theory that everyone feels sorry for an orphan. That's why Peter Parker, we feel sorry for him. That's why Luke Skywalker, we feel sorry for him. Not and it's even worse if you're an orphan. If then your aunt or uncle or both gets killed, then then we really feel sorry for you. Or Superman, your whole planet gets killed. Everyone you know. Uh, but the Frankenstein monster has no parents to get killed. He's got a creator who can't make him happy. And the
Hmm.
Frankenstein becomes a monster because he blames the creator for the ills of his life. you see. But he wasn't raised properly. That's what the story's actually kind of about. He
Mhm.
doesn't have the love of a woman he doesn't have a mother's love, you see. Now, I don't think Frankenstein fits into the Easter theory of storytelling, because the end of the story
No.
is the monster is lost somewhere in the Arctic wilderness, and Frankenstein is rescued by a sea captain, and he tells his story, and then he goes off to try to find the monster to kill him because the monster killed all his friends and family or something. But Frankenstein kind of brought it on himself by creating a monster, you know. But you
Mm.
gotta kind of feel sorry for the guy. I mean, it was a great scientific discovery. Yeah,
Mm.
like the atom bomb, or something else where you create it and you don't realize what's going to happen. And it was the first science fiction book. I think it deserves the credit for being number one. So,
Well, fair enough. Well, on that note, I hope everybody has a good Easter. Go to your local Catholic church. Participate in the Easter Triduum. It's amazing.
it's amazing.
Starting on Holy Thursday and through to Good Friday and Easter Saturday.
And it's your chance to participate in the one myth that is actually a true story. The reason why these
Mm.
ceremonies are so ceremonial is because you're entering into a story. It becomes real,
Yep.
you see.
Mm. So, on that note, I hope everyone has a lovely Easter, and we'll be back with the regular show soon. I keep saying that, but it's true. It will be back soon.
We believe in the resurrection.
Talk to you next time. Like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.